Hello and welcome to the BusinessXtoY podcast, the weekly podcast where we bring you business stories from a generational perspective. Damn, I've done that at least 20 times now, and this is the first one I totally messed up, but I'm leaving it in there. I'm Brian, representing Generation X.
I'm Brandon, representing Generation Y.
How was your week, Brandon?
It's pretty solid, no complaints, Made it through another week of life, studying, and just being a young man out here in this world.
And we very much appreciate that. I also appreciate you coming in and doing this recording with me. I'm actually helping my parents move today. I'm actually at their new place, helping them move into it. But this is an important episode. It is July 1st. Of 2019 to be aired on July 3rd, 2019. And this is the first episode where we're going to get a bunch of new listeners because we are ready to go on Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, and CastBox. So all those you folks listening to us on any of those particular things, thank you very much for listening. Please, do all those things that you do when you, like a podcast and stuff like that. This is a show that we put a lot of energy in, and hope that you enjoy. And we'd love to hear feedback from you. So leave comments and reviews and stuff like that. So we'll read them and learn and grow from them and stuff.
Yeah, definitely do that.
All right. We have 3 business stories we want to talk about this week, and a main topic which Brandon will introduce later. Without further ado, let's get to the first story. The headline for it is: in a tight labor market, blue-collar employers are turning to non-compete clauses. Right off the bat, that's like a totally misleading headline to use in this particular situation, which I'll talk more about at the end of this particular article. I kind of wanted to start that. I think the article's headline really should be, what does a stockbroker in New York have in common with a security guard in Florida? They both got non-compete contracts. And that's where this article talks about a lot. They talk about a security guard in Florida left to go to, his, pretty low-paying job to a new pretty low-paying job as a security guard, and the company he left filed a non-compete violation with him, which caused him to be fired from the company that he went to. And he ended up having to go to court and fight that, and ended up losing in Florida. Fast food restaurants have been using non-competes for a while. As of 2018, here's a abbreviated list of fast food restaurants with non-competes for their employees: Carl's Jr., Arby's, Burger King, Dunkin Donuts, and Five Guys. And there's more, but that's just an abbreviated list. And as of 2018, those companies all had non-competes. I don't have 2019 numbers because that is not a resource that I can take advantage of. But in truth, non-competes have been popping up throughout in these particular businesses since really the mid-2000s, around 2006, 2007. And during those time periods, we've had, labor markets that were full of people who needed jobs, and labor markets that were, contracting. So I don't think it's fair to say, it's because it's a tightening labor market, they're using these non-competes to, kind of tie people down. I think this is just a regular corporate abuse situation, and it's more from, entitlement, and because they can get away with it. Do you have a defense of these corporate masters using this particular clause, or are you on the same bandwagon as me, as thinking it's kind of disgusting for a fast food chain to, give a fast food worker a non-compete?
I would definitely say that I agree with you on the fast food level, just because, that stuff, I don't want to come off condescending by saying, I don't want this to come off condescending, but, fast food restaurant, working in a fast food restaurant, I've done it before.
Sure.
You don't really, the skills needed to do that. It's not something it's
they're not giving any trade secrets to you. You know.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, everything is pretty much generalized. It's
special sauce isn't secret
and a
sauce.
lot of those, and a lot of those skills are replicable anyways. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, okay, like I signed a non-compete when I worked for a certain freight brokerage. That makes a lot more sense because, you know, the different things like the training I had, the information that I had to assess and be capable with and use, all that is an actual, you know, competitive advantage versus, you know, something in the fast food field, you know, where, okay, I feel like their main advantages, I don't know. Well, I guess you could kind of argue that, like, maybe with, like, a higher end place like Chick-fil-A versus, like, McDonald's maybe. Like, maybe their customer service training is better. You know what I mean? So that serves as proprietary information and a competitive advantage. I mean, that could really make a difference if you – I mean, I understand it. I understand it from both sides. But I do think it's more so hindering the worker versus bettering corporations. You know what I mean? I feel like it's very – I think it's another means of just controlling, you know, workers.
Yeah, and there is a business, or there's a label principle called restriction of trade, right? You know, and these non-competes are clearly less protection of trade secrets, which is what a non-compete was really designed for, and the only spot that it really has carved out that's acceptable in law is to, you know, prevent the loss of a corporation's, you know, intellectual property and trade secrets, right? And these are clearly non-competes to infringe on the free trade of labor, you know, in these particular positions where, you know, taking away the only, you know, negotiating position that a, you know, wage earner at that level has. The only thing they can do is say, look, if you don't treat me right, you don't pay me right, you don't give me the hours I want, I'll leave and go work someplace else. That's it. That's all they can do. And you know, and this is, you know, clearly they don't have enough power. They want to have 100% of the power, and I think there's something wrong with that. Courts all around the country have been siding on the side of some workers when these non-competes have been coming through, which is a good thing. There was a list in that article, and I didn't copy-paste it over. But anybody who wants to read the article can go to BusinessXtoY.com and check it out. So,
yeah, that is. I agree with your point there. Great point.
Thank you, sir. All right. A study has gone through to basically take a look at the what's the word I'm looking for? Boy, I'm falling down on the job here today. Okay, so a study has gone through looking at millennials' net worth, and some things are have come to attention. Since 1996, the net worth of millennial has dropped the net worth of somebody from the age 18 to 35 has dropped 34%, which is a lot, and that might explain why so many millennials are choosing not to own homes, choosing to cut back on credit cards. But there's some other things that, you know, that doesn't necessarily explain. The bar soap industry is having trouble getting millennials to use bar soap. Wedding businesses are contracting. Less people are getting married, and especially in that particular age range, which I think that could probably be explained away by a 34% drop in net worth. But here's the one that I think is the funniest. The study also showed that millennials have a dislike for American cheese. So are you trying to destroy American cheese, Brandon? Do you have a particular hatred for American cheese, people of your generation?
I mean, I'm not a real big cheese guy to begin with.
No.
But American cheese is just something reserved for burgers and burgers only.
Yeah. So in your refrigerator right now, do you have little square pieces of separated American cheese in like little packets?
No, the only cheese I have in my refrigerator right now is shredded Mexican cheese.
That's how I roll too, man. Shredded is the only way it needs to be. I don't need to have it in that brick where all I can do is shred it. And I certainly hate those prepackaged,
Gross.
Yeah. So anyway, and I also don't like bar soap. So maybe I am a millennial. I have to.
I do like bar soap though.
I don't like bar soap. I like liquid soap.
Liquid soap, I feel like I'm not getting enough bang for my buck. Bar soap lasts a minute. And I like using organic bar soap, too. Like, I'll mix it up. Might get, like, the almond. Like, they got this, like, almond soap. They got this African black soap. I like going all natural stuff, like, now. Like, Carmen put me onto that, and it's just kind of worked out better for me.
Well, and the reason I think the bar soap industry is having troubles, people aren't seeing the growth that they usually see, right? Is because they really like bar soap is one of the things that it used to be you'd see commercials for all the time, Zestfully Clean and Dove and all of these commercials. Yeah. They would just bombard. Every third commercial would be a bar soap commercial, like the way prescription drugs are now, or Geico is now. And they haven't been able to advertise as much because people aren't buying their product as much. And even when they did, I think they've noticed their advertising wasn't very successful because we're all kind of like onto the game. It's like they only had this one move. It's saying, hey, if you use our bar soap, women will find you more attractive, or men will find you more attractive. People will love you. And I think we've all have gotten kind of tired of that particular marketing manipulation. Like, we all know that while having fresh breath and not stinking is a way to be more socially acceptable, we also know that, choosing people you care about based on those fairly shallow things is not a thing that we want to be marketed to anymore. And at least me, I've been kind of turned off by them, and I don't think they know how to market any other way. So they've kind of stopped marketing, and since they're not in our face anymore, their products aren't being compulsively purchased any longer.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like advertisement is definitely more. I agree with you with the advertisement, but I think liquid soap has just become the norm due to different. I think great campaigns like the Old Spice, their campaign, and just different other ones, just kind of help really switch that and solidify that too.
And the Old Spice campaign is a perfect example of it because they do a bunch of these sports ones, right, where they're just silly and over the top, right? They're almost
so funny though.
Yeah. They're almost mocking the trope of use this soap and people will love you. They're saying they're saying it's obviously ridiculous and we're making fun of that, right? Where Irish Spring and Zest and Dove, they're afraid by exposing that trope, they think they're going to take a bigger hit on their profits. And I'm speaking for them. I don't know if that's actually what they're thinking. It'd be funny if there really is in a boardroom someplace they're going, ooh, he nailed us. Oh, he's on us. But we'll just kind of go through we'll do our own little. I'll do my own little quick millennial survey. We've already talked about American cheese. It's nasty. You don't like it. Any particular hatred of weddings?
Weddings? No, I can understand why the wedding business has gone out of business because people won't get married anymore. It's expensive, and what too? It's kind of hard to be happy with somebody your entire life when y'all can barely afford things. Everybody is low key broke now. You know what I'm saying? The general public is already so far under debt wise. I feel like I don't know.
No, that's absolutely right. This study shows, right, that 18 to 35-year-olds make 35% less money than they did when I was a freshman in high school, right? That's while that's a long time ago, right? It's not that long ago, and that's that will impair, your thoughts of what you want to do for the future. But you know what I also found, people your age, people my age, back when we were your age, we were actually into the big destination nonsense wedding behavior, stupidity, craziness, spend a year's salary going into debt on your wedding, right? That was a thing that we would behave like, right? And I've noticed now that people your age, you guys all want real low key, small ceremonies, cheap as possible, potluck style. Hey, we're getting married, so everybody bring a dish, don't bring any presents.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's literally like, because like now I feel like getting married is seen as a bad business move more than as like a completing moment of life. You know what I mean?
Sure,
Like,
yeah. Like
because
I'm adult now.
we see divorce.
Yeah.
We see divorce in like all that negativity on TV all the time. Like, think about a lot of the stuff that is like considered pretty regular TV, like things like Jerry Springer and
Sure.
Teen Mom and dysfunctionality. Like, nobody wants to already inherit that. Like, by having, I mean, a lot of people want to. I can understand a lot of people wanting to avoid that as well, but like, I also feel like it's largely just financial instability. Like, why do I want to sign away half of nothing that I own when, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't, like, I'm already in debt. You're in debt. We just have debt together, and it's only going to get worse because we're only going to have, like, kids, and they're going to have debt.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Okay, so we checked marriage off on the list there. All right, the last one
right now, Tom Rich
is credit cards. Do you hate credit cards? Are you trying to destroy credit cards, millennial?
I don't know. My whole view on credit is slowly starting to shift the more I start to learn about business and like trying to figure out how to run my own, like on like what exactly I'm going to do. Because essentially, like, I mean, unless you're having like even with some service businesses, like it would be a good idea to have credit because like you don't want a lot of that liability directly on your name. Like, that's a lot of expense up front for marketing and different things like that. So it makes sense if you're doing something that's going to make you that money back and even more. But like blatantly using credit to live, I don't think is a good idea.
Yeah, we need to do a whole show on that. We need to use. I'm going to put that just right in the notes right now. Blatantly using credit cards to live. That's going to be what the show note is going to be. So cards to live. Yeah, that's we need that needs to be a larger talked about subject. So we're gonna give a 50% on that. So I think that study is at least a 50% fail by my peer reviewed own study that I just conducted right there with my favorite millennial. So.
I mean, it depends on who you ask, though, because, like, I don't know. To me personally, I feel like trying to live with a credit card or, like, living as if you have a credit card, like, well, living off of a credit card is like swimming in the deep part, like swimming in the ocean with floaties. Like, you can't swim, you can just float.
Yeah. No, and honestly, that's the way credit cards would like you to be. Yeah, no, just float. Be in this little tedious position here, and do all you can just to stay afloat. That's exactly where we'd like you. But yeah, we need to do like a whole show on that because I have strategies, I have business tips that people could benefit from, and I have loads a bunch of do's and don'ts. I will, as a tease for that particular episode, which we will probably do pretty soon. There is nothing that I enjoy more than the numerous rewards checks that I get in for the different credit cards that I use. I get tens, not hundreds of dollars. I get tens of dollars a month from multiple different cards for hitting different rewards levels, and I haven't paid interest on a card in 11 years. So I'm only paying from what I already bought, and not one penny more. So
yeah, you should explain that because
so that's yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, like last month, I'll give you 3 different cards gave me rewards checks last month, and I believe it was in the neighborhood of $50 total. And that was a real good month, but I never have a month less than $13 in rewards points, in rewards checks.
Hey, staying positive is better than being negative.
Absolutely. All right, you ready to talk about our last story before we get to the main topic?
Yeah, let's go.
All right. So, the malls in this country have been on life support for a decade, and what they're thinking is going to bring them back to life is the video game industry, specifically esports. The Mall of America is investing $5 million into turning a 1,500 square feet of their mall into an esports lounge where people can play games like Fortnite and FIFA World Cup and all kinds of different esports competitions. They've also partnered with the people who make the Harry Potter video game that's called Harry Potter Wizards United, and that's a mobile game which features a augmented reality type thing, kind of like Pokemon Go. And as a gamer, I have to point out, I'm a guy who's been to E3 twice. I did not get into either of those things. I'm not into augmented reality gaming, so I've never. I think I did download Pokemon Go, but I think it was only in my phone for about a day before I dumped it out of here. And I did not even know this Harry Potter game existed until I read this story. But they're actually, this SMG group is going to be partnering with these Harry Potter folks in 200 different locations that are, you'll be able to get some benefit by going to the actual spot and playing the game and stuff like that. So do you think the rebirth of the new kind of arcade is exactly what malls need to get themselves off life support? Or do you think this is probably going to fizzle out as a fad and malls will be right back where they started, from?
I honestly think only the Mall of America in Minnesota. Yeah. Is that what this is based at?
I'm not sure if it's the one in Minnesota, but I think Mall of America in Minnesota is the United States' largest mall, right? And I think that's...
It is.
Yeah. I think it is, but I don't want to state for sure and then be giving fake news. So we'll just keep it vague. I can tell you for sure it's SMG Groups, the mall that they own that's called Mall of America. Let's keep it that way.
You said fake news. That's funny. But yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm assuming it is, but even if it's not, I mean, I feel like that's a power move for a very small group of elite malls that already have an immense amount of foot traffic.
That's a very good point. Like, not every mall could devote a huge part of itself to allowing people to sit and stand up in front of 15-inch monitors, maybe 17-inch monitors, and play a video game, and still be able to sell stuff at this mall.
Exactly, and I mean you have to understand too, like the whole reason that is going to happen is because it's an event. Like, you know what I'm saying? That's going to literally, I feel like that's mainly going to be like event type deals. Like, they're the type of place that could get away with having a different kind of event every weekend. That's going to have enough money to make that work.
Yeah.
Whereas a place like in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, or like, elsewhere in the world is not going to have enough attraction and pull to make that work. Like, that's just a loss of money. Like, malls overall are dying. But, I mean, I guess the Mall of America and maybe a select few other places that have a market. Well, I mean, and you have to think about this too. Like, probably the only reason why that's going to work in Minnesota is because Minnesota, that's the biggest thing in Minnesota. Like, there's other places and other events, like other things that can hold events just like that other markets would have to compete.
Sure.
With, you know what I'm saying? Like in other places, like in Orlando or like Las Vegas, like.
And if their idea is, like, look, arcades died, and that's where we started to have our problems. Like, when the arcade business died, right? Malls didn't realize it at first, but like that was the beginning of the erosion of malls. And it was an accident, right? Arcades didn't kill. Isn't the wound that killed malls? Or put malls on life support, but they were they were the start of that topple. Really, it's the internet and online shopping and the loss of the tax benefit for building malls that really caused them to topple. It's a bunch of different. The death by 1,000 paper cuts is my point. But if owners of these malls think all we have to do is reinvent the arcade and everybody will come back, I mean, like I have a feeling that will either not work, or if it does work, it'll work entirely by accident.
I don't think it'll work because the whole premise of there's no attraction point of going to an arcade anymore when everybody can just play in the comfort of their house. Like,
I mean,
parents,
play in the comfort of your house, like games, like the games that people mostly play are on their phones. And I mean, this Harry Potter thing that they're talking about is a game that's on your phone, right? Like I don't see that driving people to a location when the arcade is on my phone already.
Yeah.
But I've never once played Pokemon Go, which I think puts me in the minority.
I've never played that either.
No, you haven't played it either?
No, man. No. That game sounded like me possibly ending up in some places I wasn't supposed to be and looking for something that actually doesn't exist.
No.
So
yeah, I was not interested. I was too old to get into Pokemon as a teenager. Anyway, I was like that was something that little kids much younger than me were into, and I think you were probably too young. I think Pokemon was played out by the time you came around. No, it was a big deal.
Pokemon and Dragon Ball Z was like the whole shebang back in my day.
All right, well, I might be too much of an old fuddy-duddy to really comment on it. But you know what though, I'm part of my most optimistic kid self is rooting for it. I built my career in malls, selling people cell phones in malls and stuff like that. I would probably say half of my, retail, especially early career. No, actually not half. 80% of my early career was done in malls, and then maybe half of my retail career has taken place in malls. I would like to see them make a comeback. I think it would be an overwhelmingly good thing for our economy if malls could find a way to be relevant. But I don't know if I want it so bad, I'm willing to believe this is going to do it. But I'm rooting for it. I miss arcades. I do. I miss them. But at the same time, they're like if somebody like offered me an arcade, they're like, hey, you want to buy my arcade for $1? I tell them no, I don't think it's worth it. I'd rather buy a Slurpee for $1. I think that'd be a better business move for me is to spend that $1 on a Slurpee.
Yeah, at least you'd be caffeinated.
Yeah. At least I'll get some work done, and just about any work that I'll do, hopped up on the caffeine that Slurpee will give me, will probably garner me more profit than owning an arcade. So yeah. But anyway, I'm rooting for him. I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah.
All right, man. You ready to talk about the main story?
Yes, sir. So the main story that we're going to discuss today is it's how to receive feedback. Knowing what to accept and knowing what to just kind of throw to the wayside and keep on moving with.
Excellent. So how do you discern between useless feedback and useful feedback?
I mean, initially, it all starts with your attitude. Like, you have to be able to see feedback and receive feedback with zero ego. Like, I mean, it's as hard as it's really hard to do, but like, you have to just see it from a mute point initially, so you're able to decipher, what's actually being said and how you can initially usefully use it. But with that being said, too, you kind of have to be able to look at it and who's, giving you that feedback as well. Because, you don't want to value feedback of certain people, especially if they're not doing what you're doing or, you know what I mean? It's one of those things that's kind of like a by-case situation.
Totally know what you're talking about. And it's really helpful in the sales world, and you find it a lot. So, I mean, like, I guess, a lot of times you can get a lot of very useful feedback from your peers, and I would say the most useful feedback you can get from your peers is experience information stuff. Like, this works when I'm dealing with this kind of customer. This doesn't work when I'm dealing with this kind of customer. That's on sale. This isn't on sale. You should, leverage this. You should remember, check these promotions. I especially of very successful peers, if taking a look at their routines would be, and taking advice from them on your routine would be good. I tend to discard feedback from low performing peers, right? Like I never said this out loud, but no, I think I did. I would say it with friends that I'm joking with and things like that. But I would always, if somebody who was not hitting their quota very often, right? And I'm a person that hits my quota on a regular basis, and they want to give me advice on stuff. I would, joke around with my friends and say, hey, A students don't take advice from C students, So that would be, and I would, and that's too harsh, right? There's probably some things that a C student can teach an A student, right? But a lot of times people who are low performers will give you advice intentionally to tank you. We'll tell you to do things. We'll try and get you to, be as lazy as them, not work as hard, take shortcuts like they do. So you won't be as successful. So they won't. So they'll look as so they won't look as bad, right? So I would say a good group of people to discard feedback from almost offhand would be feedback that is created to sabotage you from people who aren't doing as well as you are.
Yeah, I agree with you, and you also have to realize that what you're saying too about people giving those kind of people giving you advice, they do it unintentionally, so don't take it personally.
Yeah,
sometimes it's unintentionally, and then sometimes it is, but still.
Sometimes it's unintentionally. Sometimes it's subconsciously. They don't even.
Yeah.
They don't even know.
They don't even realize it. Yeah.
You. Sometimes it's not though.
Yeah.
Sometimes
well,
it's come on, I suck.
Disregard it.
Can you suck too, please? Please suck like I do.
Yeah, but either way, you should disregard it. And I feel like another thing is too, though. I still like to listen to what I give it a ear shot just so I can see what's going on with it. Because sometimes those people will see things that you don't see in a different way. So it's always good to get a different perspective.
They do. And sometimes it's important to know, sometimes, some of these people suck so bad that, if you're a good performer, right? And you're somebody who always starts off as a good performer, sometimes you might not understand why these guys suck, right? And so listening to their feedback will give you an understanding of why they suck. And, maybe at the level you're at right now, that's not going to be beneficial for you to know. But when you get to a supervisory level and you see those, things that are going on with people, beneath you, you can be like, I used to know a guy that sucked like you. I'm not going to let you do that. You're not going to suck on my watch, So,
But not only that, too, it'll let you know what behaviors to avoid,
right.
What things to not say.
Yep.
Because, that's something that I picked up a lot, with the, amount of time that I've spent in sales and just kind of honestly, evaluating people and looking at things differently. Somebody will let you know what kind of energy and what kind of things that they're on just by the things that they say and do. You know what I mean? A bad performer is going to be a negative thinker. And they're going to feel like they're not in control of things around them, you know what I mean, or their circumstances or situations. So, that'll just tell you, okay, as long as I'm not thinking like that or acting like that, I'll be all right, you know what I mean?
Yeah, at least, if not all right, but in a much better position.
Exactly. You're okay, they're talking a lot instead of listening more. What should I do more of? Listening. They're asking a lot of, closed-ended questions and the conversation's going nowhere. What should I ask? More open-ended questions. You know what I mean? So while you should disregard some of the things that they are saying, you should also, pay attention. You should always just pay attention to your surroundings and the people that you're surrounded by because, whether you mean to or not, you're going to pick up on the things that they do.
Absolutely. The opposite of that is even a bad supervisor can give you useful feedback. I would almost offhand disregard anything from a low-performing peer, right? Not think too hard about it, not process it too hard, especially if they're coming at you, looking at ways to make you suck, right? And that's their purpose. If they're looking at ways to make you better, then maybe, give it both ears. But if they're looking at ways to make you suck, maybe hear it, just put it in the background, analyze it later. But even a poor supervisor can give you necessary feedback because even somebody who's a poor communicator, who doesn't do their job very well, who all the rest of that stuff, they're at least giving you feedback on what's important to them, even if they're not articulating it all that well. So, those folks, supervisors, people who, whose paychecks and schedules are in their hand, those people that you absolutely, even if you don't like them and they don't like you back, you absolutely have to pay close attention to their feedback and maybe ask them follow-up questions that, especially ones that are poor supervisors, got to be very careful. Got to be very careful with the follow-up questions because they like to turn everything into an attack on them. So, you might want to immediately just say, I'm going to at most ask 3 follow-up questions. And if you know that 3 follow-up questions bothers them, maybe just ask 2,
Yeah, I think you just touched on something that is great. Follow-up questions. Like, I feel like so many people shy away from follow-up questions because they're afraid to get punched in the face.
Sure.
But you have to realize that getting your feelings hurt is going to give you the best information that you needed. It's literally the leveling point that you need to figure out where you actually stand in reality. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like, a lot of the most ground shaking and like most gut wrenching moments I've had in my life have like given me that reality. That sense of reality of like, okay, this is actually where I am. Like, I'm nowhere where I thought I was, or like, I'm not as good as I thought I was.
Yeah. And on we're dealing with one of those supervisors who's, not good at giving feedback, who's not good at communicating, who's just not a good boss, right? Like the only way you can make them be a good boss is to ask them follow-up questions. And then I want everybody who's listening to this to be very careful with this particular piece of advice, right? Because it can be disastrous if you're asking follow-up questions to beat this guy or girl, but let's face it, probably a guy. Most women that I've ever had as supervisors have actually been pretty good at being supervisors. So because of the English language makes me sex things, I'm going to stick with guy this entire time. So when you're dealing with him, you like totally remove that instinct to ask follow-up questions to trap them. Right? Like there is, like especially if it's stupid feedback, especially if they're accusing you of doing something or trying to train you on something that you do better than they do, right? Now is not the time to prove that point, right? Now is the time to find out how they want you to do it and see if you can make the way they want you to do this particular task or the feedback they're giving you, if you can incorporate that to make you better, There's a chance you might not be able to. There's a chance they're dead wrong, But use those feedback, use that crucial time not as a chance to score points and defeat them. Use that as a time to really get out of them the best you can possibly get, because they're your supervisor, they're your boss. They might be there longer than you are, and you might need them to push you to that next spot. And having a contentious relationship with them, I have never been in a situation where that's benefited me. I've never seen that work.
Exactly. I feel like being coachable as an employee and just listening and being respectful will get you a lot farther than just trying to, like you're saying, like the intent behind the question is huge.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's just like that should not be something that you have like in a professional setting, like, you know what I mean? Like, and a good way to avoid moments like that and really just, creating that space between, look, I'm like asking these questions to be, to be like smart, or like I'm asking these questions to actually grow and, be a better employee, is just literally saying, hey, I actually want to ask you this, or like, why do you see it this way, or like, how do you see it this way, like, or why does this work this way? Actually asking those questions is just making it known that you're not asking it to be disrespectful or to come across a certain way, just being curious.
Yeah. I always find that, probably the best way to do that is like, bad supervisors hate the question why. Because I said so is typically the answer. So
because it's been done like that.
Yeah, I always think, and that's the answers you get. That's how you know you're dealing with a bad one, because it's always done that way. Or that's how it's done. That's how we do it. That's the right way. So if you got one of those, right? Why bang your head head against that wall? Why don't do that? Just ask. Well, okay. For instance, Like have them go over a specific situation, have them tell you an antidote, rather than why, or show me how, or give them a situation, ask them what they would do in that particular situation, right? And again, like, before you ask that question, banish from your mind gotchas,
Yeah, like watch and check your tonality
Yep.
and your overall demeanor.
Yeah,
Like,
take a deep breath, and think about how you're going to ask this question. What's the information you're looking to get from it? And if you find it through your personal analysis, then I'm going to say this. That would be the wrong place to go. Just don't do that. Go reevaluate your thing. Delete that particular motive from your from the thinking, and then go that particular way. I kind of view this as like when I was in high school lifting weights on the football team, right? Like my competition wasn't in the weight room, right? My competition was on the field during game time, right? So guys who were trying to I'm better than that guy because my bench press is higher. No, dude, that would be in a bench press competition. But are we in a bench press competition? We training for a bench press competition? Or are we training to play football? So just lift weights, get stronger, and go this way. And the same thing with this feedback situation. This is not a time to win a competition. This is a time to train, to get better. So when you get on the field, you can use these particular attributes that you're learning. And, I have had more than my fair share of bad supervisors in my life. And I have been able to learn stuff from bad supervisors. Sometimes you have to drag it out of them, but you can learn things from bad supervisors.
Yeah, and I think another thing that's huge about this whole overall situation we're talking about now is also, if you're wrong and you figure out that you're wrong, don't be afraid to say sorry. Like, it's not that big of a deal. People are wrong all day, every day.
Absolutely.
Everybody, important people, not important people, we're all wrong. We're all human. Yeah. And another thing is, too...
And nobody cares that much either. Nobody...
Yeah.
It's a big deal to you because you're the one that's wrong, right? But, other than that, everybody... Nobody really noticed that much. Nobody cared that much. And as long as you don't do it again, that's nobody's going to remember.
Yeah. And I feel like another thing is, too, people forget, when you decide to work for somebody, you're a part of a team. You honestly don't matter. You're there to do something. You know what I mean? You're there operating in a unit because that person hired you to be a part of a unit.
Yeah.
So if you play your cards and do what you need to do, it makes it easier for everybody else, including yourself. So just, you know what I'm saying? Just do what you got to do.
And no matter what job you work, if you're a salesperson or you're a fry cook or whatever, your number one job, and I kind of hate this because the way I always like to look at it, right? If you're doing anything with customers, right, everybody's number one job at a company that has anything to do with customers is to serve the customer. The CEO's job is to serve the customer. The person at the call center job is to serve the customer. The person working in payroll job is to serve the customer, right? So or facilitate somebody else to serve the customer, right? And that's the way I'd like to look at it. But in reality, your real job at any job you work at it is to do whatever your boss tells you and to make your boss's job easier. That's the real job. I hate that. I hate that that's true. But that's and so and a lot of times when I'm evaluating a pay plan or evaluating what my position is, looking at the list of responsibilities I got to get done, sometimes I have to prioritize things that just make my boss's job easier, or things my boss just wants me to do over things that make me money because, he decides whether I'm fired or hired,
Yeah, and I mean, that's just one of those things you deal with when you're deciding that you're working underneath somebody. And, that's my thing, too, though. Even if you're not the boss has to make sure his customers are happy. The customer is the ultimate boss.
Right.
No customers, no money. So, I mean, it is what it is, but at the end of the day, you shouldn't take advice from people who aren't doing what you're doing or, doing it better than you're doing it. And you should just make sure you pay attention to everybody.
I think a better way to put that is you should process advice from people that, are low performers differently than you should process
Yeah,
advice.
That's a lot better way to place it.
Yeah, you should process boss from your supervisor. That's a different bag there, because that's the reason I wanted to throw that thing in, is that, like, everybody's job is to make their boss's job easier, right? Because trust me, every boss on the planet feels that way. Even the bosses that say everybody's main job is to take care of the customers or to do the right thing for the company or to advance the stockholders. No. That's what they're saying, right? But every single boss on the planet feels that all their subordinates' jobs is to make their job easier, right? And I've been both a subordinate and a boss, so I know for a fact that that's the way the particular thing goes. And so you need to process feedback from those two sources differently, and you need to understand your boss's perspective and understand understand your relationship to him, right? And basically what I'm trying to diplomatically say is understand if he's a stupid boss and he's dumb and he's bad at being a boss, and understand if he's a good boss. If he's a good boss and he's a good communicator and the rest of that stuff, then you need to pay really strong attention to the feedback they're giving him, down to the body language, eye contact, subtext, everything. If he's a crappy boss, and so try and scrape out of him what you need to know to make it so you can do what you need to do for this person better, and I'm not saying kiss their behind, but bad bosses, basically that's all they want you to do is kiss their behind. So if that makes your job easier, makes his job easier, then suck it up and kiss their behind as much as you can tolerate.
Man, the only reason why I'm working for somebody is because I think they can take me to a different place.
Absolutely.
A higher place. So if you think you have a bad boss, the only thing you should be considering is whether the compensation is worth sitting around and being stagnated.
Yeah, and some bosses aren't, like Harvey Weinstein sexually harassing, Jabba the Hutt monsters, right? I'm not, you don't have, he's an awful, horrible, this terrible boss, right? You don't have to be that bad just to be bad, right? Honestly, some of the worst bosses I've ever had are just poor communicators, people who frequently mean one thing, but the words that come out of their mouths are the opposite, and they're not doing it on purpose. They're just bad at telling you their thoughts and feelings and scraping it into words, and also bosses that are obsessed with you kissing their behind. I really hate that. I can understand liking it a little bit, but I've had bosses that their only thing they want from you is for you to kiss their behind, and to the detriment of everything else, to the detriment of the commission, to the customers, the viability of the company. All they want is their ego stroked. Can't stand that. But
I've seen that before too, man. That's an ugly sight.
And it's really brutal in a sales organization where the boss just wants you to tell them how great they are, whether or not you guys are hitting numbers, whether or not your paycheck is what it should be, to the detriment of your paycheck. They all they want is their ego stroked.
Yeah, but we'll save more good boss and bad boss talk for another episode.
You're right. That's a different episode. I'll put that in the notes. Can we talk a minute about accepting positive feedback?
Oh yeah, that's true. I forgot all about that.
All
yeah.
Right. So and this is something that I admittedly had trouble with. And I think to the point of doing it to the maximum poorly, right? I used to work with a person who, if you gave them a piece of positive feedback, they would return the piece of positive feedback around. It's kind of like a self-deprecating joke way, but also they would find a way to kind of insult you with it, right? And I can't think of any really good examples of it, but trust me, more than 50% of the time, if you said something nice to this person, and notice how I'm using words that are absolutely hiding this person's gender. I found an English a loophole around it, right? Because I really don't want to give the gender of this particular person away, or because I don't want them to know that that's the way I felt about this. If by any chance this makes it to them. So anyway, so this person doesn't know who I'm talking about.
They probably at this point with how you described it.
I did. I think. I'm sorry. What did you say? No, I'm gonna ignore it. I'm gonna ignore what you said because you laughed immediately when I asked you what it was. I know it was no good. So I'm just gonna go on what I'm saying.
I said, if that person is listening to this right now, they know exactly who they're talking about. Just with how careful you're putting everything. It's so funny.
But you know what? I have plausible deniability, so if this person, reaches out to me on Facebook and says, "Hey, were you talking about me?" I can say, "Nope, nope, I wasn't," and you can't prove that I was. So there. So anyway, so when you're receiving positive feedback, it's the easiest way to do it correctly is just say thank you. Just say thank you. If you have some follow-up questions, ask the follow-up questions. Just like if you're, receiving negative feedback on something, you can use this as a possibility to grow. And the beauty of it, of just saying thank you when you get the positive feedback, just giving the person a heartfelt thank you and moving on, right, is that I found that when I was dealing with this person that I was talking about earlier, I kind of stopped giving them positive feedback, right? Because I knew it was just going to be an awkward, irritating part of my day. I knew it was like no matter how I would expect this person to take it or what I thought this person might say or whatever, like I couldn't actually plan for it. There's no possible way I could phrase the feedback I was going to give them to shield me from having to take the feedback boomerang that I was gonna receive on it. So I just stopped telling them nice things about themselves, right? Or about their behavior. And that's the last thing that you want a supervisor, a boss to do is to stop thinking nice things about you. You want them to think nice things about you on a regular basis. So reward them for giving them the positive feedback. And I'm not saying immediately give them back a compliment, right? I'm just saying, say, "Oh, well, I really appreciate that, boss. Thank you very much." And again, if you want to take this opportunity to elaborate on that, you can use the for instance thing. You can ask them, I appreciate that you like it. If I did this, would you like it better? All kinds of stuff that you can do. But the first thing you do before you do anything, just say thank you, genuinely.
Yeah, I think that's something I was trying to. That's something that I kind of like. You kind of get like an extra point and a half just by saying thank you and taking the knee on it versus, Gronkowski spiking the ball or like going any other way about it.
Absolutely.
Just say thank you.
Then they feel good, you feel good, and anytime you got double goods, that's a win. Take your win. But I have to admit me dealing with this person that was doing it poorly or making me feel bad for telling them nice things, that affected me, and I kind of did the same thing. I'd be shy about it, right? I might have done something even worse than they did, right? Like when I get a thing from a boss, I would find a way to immediately. They said, "Oh, you do that great." I'd be like, "Oh, it's only because I did it badly 900 times," Or, I'm trying to make up for this other thing that I do horribly, right? I would immediately find an excuse to tell them something bad about me. To a boss, to a district manager sometimes, Rather than just go, "Yeah, thank you."
Yeah.
And you know what the funny thing is? None of my bosses ever told me to stop doing that. Just take the compliment. They always just go, "Okay," and they just walk away from me. Crazy guy, Like, it took a sales training for somebody to point that out. It's like, hey, when somebody gives you and they kind of did it like as an aside too. It wasn't even a major part of the sales training. It was just like, "Oh, by the way, everybody, if somebody gives you a compliment, just take it, okay? Don't do something like where you tell them, because they went and the person gave the example of what the person I was talking about would do is like take the compliment and make it an insult against the person that gave you the compliment, right? Or dispute. Like how, whether you did the thing well or not, or, litigate it, just say thank you. And I was like, "Oh, I do that. I'll just say thank you from now on." And it immediately made a difference in my career. It immediately made, bosses a lot more, less reticent around me to give me compliments, more willing to give me both negative and positive feedback. And I was able to, learn things about the job that they expected me to do, that wasn't necessarily written in the book. That they don't necessarily commiss you for or spiff you on, right? This other part of the job that they wanted you to do, and it really helps out. So try and be that person that they enjoy giving positive feedback to.
Yeah, just smile, say thank you and keep it moving. But also with feedback, I feel like on the other spectrum of like positive feedback, like you should understand how to receive it mentally too. Like realize that feedback, especially positive feedback, is it is a moment for reflection. You should enjoy it, but don't enjoy it too much because remember that it's only momentary. It's a snapshot of an occurrence versus like one action that you do can literally change that whole standing. So like it's all about the next thing and keeping it moving and continuing.
Yeah, and you want to, as in I think I've of anybody who's been listening to, all these, I think everybody kind of sees that I have a process for everything, right? So, my process for, looking at feedback is for first, who's my audience, who's giving me this feedback, right? How does it benefit me? How does it benefit them that they're giving me this feedback? What is the control they're looking to put on? What's the angle they're looking to work, right? And
yeah,
then,
for real.
And then how can I benefit from it? Where can I grow? And none of my process, right? And I'm sure this is a long evolution, right? But none of my process is what they're saying true. What they're saying is true to them, and that's the important thing, especially if it's a supervisor, right? If it's a peer, then that factors in too, but not nearly as much. But I'm not worried about are they right, when they're telling this. If they obviously feel that they are, and I probably could do very little to dispel them of that particular thing. So that's the lens in which I need to process this particular thing, and then how can I take that information that they're giving me for free, and then use that to benefit me when what my position is with the particular company or what I'm trying to do. Is the information they're giving me something that's going to make me more commission, or are they giving me this information because they want to make me less commission and more work towards their pay plan? And if they're giving me that particular piece of information, is there something that I can learn from that I can use that will allow me to advance myself in the company, advance my paycheck? How can I make them happy and my paycheck happy at the same time if their particular goals aren't aligned with my goals? And that's really the crux of feedback is, especially coming from a supervisor, is trying to get you in line with their goals.
I mean, yeah, I guess, yeah, when you're speaking about a supervisor, all of what you said is, like, relevant. But I was more so speaking of, like, my advice was more so, it could be applied in the business realm, but it could be applied more so everywhere. Like, just always pay attention to who's giving you feedback and what they're saying. Yeah. Like, what you said is spot on, too, like, with what angles they're trying to work. But I mean, like, I don't know. A certain part of you should also be like, I don't know. I do kind of disagree with what you're saying about, is it true or is it not true? Because they wouldn't be making that comment about you if they didn't feel that it was true. So what are they looking at you and seeing and basing that off of is really what you should be asking yourself.
Right. Like I said, it's true to them. They're spending time and energy to bring you information. So it's important to them. So, and again, if they're a supervisor, that needs to be important to you. If they're a peer and they're a high-performing peer, well, then that's important information too. You need to evaluate that. If they're a low-performing peer, then, you maybe try and make this conversation as short as possible and get the maximum amount of information that you can on your day, because it's probably not super valuable, but it's still worth evaluating. You should not put zero energy into it.
I just picture you just scoffing at everybody that was underneath you.
Yeah, as I am famous for. There are, in any company that I've ever worked at, there are people who love me to death, and there are people who would love it if I died. So, yeah, I'm a fairly polarizing character.
I feel like if we worked together, I'd have fun. No, I'd probably make you angry just because I'd probably enjoy laughing at you. Like, I would enjoy
if we worked a sales job together, depending on what we sold, right, there'd be a possibility that like I would outperform you, right? Depending on what we sold, like if the timeshare thing, you're going to close more timeshare deals than me. It's not. I'm not even. I'm not even. There's no chance. And the logistics thing, yeah. But like if we were selling phones, you'd be in trouble, baby. I could give you a run for your money.
You'd have me at phones just because you have more experience. But I feel like
I'm also old though, man, and very few old men do a good job selling handsets. Very few. So there's a real good chance you could beat me in that too. You'd give me a run for my money. You'd make it hard on me.
The thing is, people don't like telling me no. That's my thing. So like, I don't know. It'd be you'd have me if we were to compete right now. But if we both had a year of just competing straight, I think I would gain more in that year than you would gain in that year.
Yeah,
and it'd be closer.
And the thing is too, I mean, like you have a force of will. Like so, your force of will would get you to quota, right? And so we'd both be at quota, and I would maybe beat you nibbly out here or there. Yeah, I'd have a trick or two up my sleeve, some experience moves that I could use on you. But like you'd be pretty much caught up with me on force of will. So as soon as you got your technique down, you'd probably run away from me. And also again, I'm an old man. I just don't got the energy that you got, and you could use that. To specifically take me out, So it wouldn't. I don't think it would be a year. I think if I was lucky, 4 months, probably closer to 3 months, and then that third month would be a dogfight.
You're giving me way too much credit, but anyways, guys, we do appreciate you listening. We do want you to take some of the advice and do with it as you can. Like, hopefully you don't just see this as just some schmucks. I hope that you do take some of the stuff that we say and value it and are able to apply it to your lives and better yourselves.
I'm sure they do, because we just talked about all kinds of ways to evaluate feedback and stuff. So use those same techniques we just talked about to evaluate this feedback.
Yeah, I wouldn't give you any kind of advice that I either didn't take and do well with, or wish I would have taken and had to deal with the consequences of not taking it.
And just like Brandon, I want to thank everybody who's listening for being the best part of this day. I enjoy this every single week. And if you enjoy it, please like and share this podcast. Leave a review on iTunes. You can subscribe to this podcast now on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and CastBox by just going into the search and typing in BusinessXtoY. That's business, the letter X, the word 2, T-O, and then the letter Y again. And you can subscribe that way. You can also become a patron by going to our website, BusinessXtoY.com, same way that's spelled as I mentioned before, and clicking on the patron button. And that's also an easy way to subscribe to the other ways I mentioned too, because right at the very top of the page, there's a link to subscribe to your favorite way of getting podcasts. So with that said, you have my permission to go make a profit.